Scammers can be known by their designer clothes, flashy cars, and exotic women. However, unfortunately for them, this kind of living is almost always what gets them caught. But there was somebody who saw this and said no, who set out to scam so much money that they would become one of the richest people in the whole world and actually plan to get away with it. But the most insane part is that this person and his accomplice were a bunch of literal kids, no different from you or me. But before I say anything further, just make sure that under no circumstances do you attempt to copy this at home. It was 2019 in Johannesburg, South Africa, when two brothers, Rais and Amir Cajee, decided that they were tired of living the stereotypical broke life. With one of the brothers being just 16 years old and the other being 19, they were at that age where money was starting to become important, but they could never seem to hit their big break. That was until one of them had an idea that would change everything. The idea was called AfroCrypt, a revolutionary platform that would introduce AI to the financial world and automatically trade cryptocurrency on people's behalf so they could make money without doing a thing. The idea sounded completely insane at first. After all, this was long before ChatGPT was invented, so nobody fully understood what AI was. However, with promises of returns of up to 10% per day on your investment, people could not help but be curious as to whether or not this thing was legit. I mean, keep in mind, that's literally saying they'll double your money in just 10 days. But despite any skepticism it brought, all you had to do if you didn't believe in it was just try. And to everybody's surprise, when they put their money in the program, it actually started to increase and their minds literally exploded. Of course, holy grail like this is not gonna just stay secret, and so more and more people wanted to give it a try, raising AfroCrypt from the ground and making the brothers' distant dreams turn into a reality. But as happy as these people were to see their earnings going up, little did they know that they were funneling their life savings into something much darker. Slowly but surely, word spread throughout the entire country about this new website where you could literally just invest your money and a few days later come back with an insane return for doing nothing. And even though it was almost too good to be true, nobody was more intrigued to hear about this than the already greedy rich elites of South Africa. And once they started to dump their funds into the program, the brothers, for the first time in their lives, really experienced what real money felt like. And they were not about to stop there. They knew that if they wanted this thing to go even bigger, they would need even more public eye. And so they took the money that they made from the investors and used it to get influencers on board. And with every passing celebrity that jumped on the train, including members of the ruling political party, AfroCrypt was literally going to the moon, and they all saw it as the future. What all started as a massive risk was now turning into a big reward right before the brothers' faces, and they could not have been happier. But not because their project was working. Oh no, you're sorely mistaken. But instead, because this project was just phase one of a much bigger scheme, and nobody would find out until it was far too late. Just a few months after the rise of AfroCrypt, the young Cajee brothers became local superstars, pulling up in brand new Lamborghini Aventadors and Rolls Royces, buying mansions, and even getting featured in financial publications that refer to them as the new leaders in the African financial market. Of course, some might think this flashy lifestyle was stupid as it could draw too much attention, but these guys weren't doing anything illegal, right? They're popular businessmen, so of course they have all these things. But little did these people know that it was all about to come crumbling down. This is because there was one fundamental flaw in AfroCrypt's business model, and only the brothers knew about it. Like we said, the point of it is to use an AI system to trade people's money on their behalf. So it's kind of crazy that if you actually go behind the scenes and check the stats, you will see that at no point in life has AfroCrypt ever actually traded a single cent for anyone. But how is this possible? People were making money. Well, that's because the way that the app works is that it tells you you're making money, but when you go to withdraw your funds, what you're actually taking out is the money of other customers who have also invested. With no trading, no algorithms, and certainly never any AI, the whole thing was just one big circle jerk, also known as a classic pyramid scheme. All this while the brothers would slowly deposit more and more of the funds into their accounts from behind the scenes. But most of their work was not yet done. Oh no, it was just beginning. Because the only way to keep a pyramid going is of course to keep on attracting new investors, bigger investors, and that is exactly what they did. They market so aggressively that they end up in the news headlines and start talking about their plans to become Africa's first ever cryptocurrency bank, something that would literally change the rest of the globe and how it functions financially. On top of this, they also launched their own cryptocurrency called Africoin, with the insane claim that it would one day surpass Bitcoin itself as the #1 cryptocurrency. But again, there was just one problem with this. If everybody in the pyramid is getting paid with other people's money, what happens if they all try to withdraw at the same time? Well, these two were definitely not gonna stick around to find out. And once they had the world on the tips of their fingers, cheering their name and expecting them to put Africa on the global financial map, behind the scenes they would begin preparing for the most diabolical turn of events of them all. At this point, it had been around 2 years since the brothers ascended to the top of Africa's social status, and it was now 2021. Both Raiz and Amir were now 18 and 21 years old, and despite being the age of high school graduates, they were both worth a total of 69,000 Bitcoin. And if you don't know what that means, let me translate it for you. $4 billion US, richer than every rapper and superstar on the planet. But this wealth was not public knowledge. In fact, it technically wasn't even theirs yet. But that was all about to change in a plan that would leave many people stripped of their hard-earned life savings forever. First, the brothers would create accounts that were far away from the country and had nothing to do with the AfroCrypt business. Then, they would discreetly transfer the funds in a way that nobody would realize the money was missing. At least not yet. Because they didn't really care if the people found out their money was gone. Their reputation pretty much meant nothing, because after this, the brothers planned to disappear off the face of the earth altogether. Something that sounds so insane, it literally only gets talked about in the movies. But of course, at least for now, the people needed a distraction. And so before anyone realized what was happening, they decided to get ahead of the problem themselves and create their own villain. And that was why in April of 2021, the company went public with a heartbreaking announcement that every single one of their servers had been hacked and they were trying to fix the issue as soon as possible. Of course, people freaked out and lost their minds, but there was a very important part of the announcement. They also made sure to specify that because of the sensitive nature of the hack, any involvement with police or local authorities could jeopardize the recovery process. And so if they wanted their money back, the best thing they could do is calm down and trust the company. As people waited for updates, of course, the issue was actually not being taken care of and the quote-unquote hack only continued to get worse. The brothers themselves were in a state of disarray, trying to fix the problem, but it just wasn't working. And slowly but surely, in front of their very eyes, every single person began to lose access to their accounts and all of their money with it. Of course, now that the money is gone, everybody who was freaking out was now in a full state of panic. But something started to happen in the coming days after this attack. If you reached out to the brothers for updates on what was going on, instead of trying to reassure you, what you would now be met with was pure and utter radio silence. And the more and more this took place, it became clear that something was off. Even if they were innocent, you can't just promise people the world and then leave them to dry when they need your assistance. And so, in a fit of pure and utter rage, the people sprung into action, chasing these individuals who promised them the world. And that's when they found the address of the AfroCrypt headquarters. And as they made their way down to the company building, ready for all the things that would happen, once they arrived, they saw something that absolutely shattered their perception of reality. Because when they pulled up, what they expected to see was the massive headquarters of an established financial institution. But instead what they saw was some random nigga's house. It was at this moment that they now knew to the core of their being that they had been played. Of course, the rage they felt only became 10 times louder. And of course, they made their way onto the property. But once they checked the home for culprits, unfortunately for them, there was not a single soul to be found. And thus, the hunt for the brothers began. They checked friends, family, cars, phone records, emails, but absolutely nothing came up. Then, a truth was revealed. It was around this time the authorities discovered that weeks prior to the hack, the brothers had begun buying citizenships in a country called Vanuatu, a small island in the Pacific Ocean far from where they were. One of the most remote locations in the world, with a small population of just 300,000. Once they saw this, they basically had them dead to rights. And as ecstatic as they were that they were finally going to get the victims' money back, once they went to the plane records to go find them, another heartbreaking truth was revealed. The Cajee brothers at no point in time had never officially crossed the South African borders. There was not a single file, document, or evidence to suggest that they were gone. But they were, and that's the problem. It was almost as if they just up and vanished without a trace. Of course, with the risk of two extremely wealthy criminals being on the loose somewhere in the world on a private jet, this now became a matter of international concern, and once Interpol got involved, they placed them on their list of high-profile wanted criminals, and so the case would begin to spread worldwide. But despite the insane amount of publicity it got, still, nobody was yet able to confirm the whereabouts of the brothers. The only speculation they had was the citizenship that they bought, but even that ended up becoming a dead end. Some suspected that they went to Dubai because it's a place that uses cryptocurrency like real money, and others had suspected that they ran to Tanzania, a country that many financial criminals have previously sought refuge in. But the investigations kept coming up short, and it's for this reason that to this very day, the Cajee brothers have never been found. Perhaps every day they're constantly looking over their shoulder, or maybe they're carefree as a bird. But one thing's for sure is that whatever they're doing right now, they are $4 billion richer doing it. As for the victims, unfortunately, due to the unregulated nature of cryptocurrency, and because AfriCrypt was never technically registered as an official financial institution, the government realized it technically had no legal obligation to continue investigating the case. And so once the investigations kept failing, it was eventually deemed pointless and they moved on with their lives. Those kids actually got away with it. And honestly, I would not be surprised if some of the victims are still suffering from the massive losses they incurred on that day. But in the end, this all serves as a lesson for us to be careful with who we trust with our money. And funnily enough, there's actually another kid this age who stole hundreds of millions of dollars in crypto. But unlike the Cajee brothers who took years, he did it all in one night, which led him to become one of the richest 19-year-olds on the earth. And if you want to learn the story of Malone Lamb and how he could have escaped but foolishly ended up getting caught, click the video on your screen right now. And as always, this case has been decoded.